All right. Welcome back, future Firebreathers. I'm joined today by a very special guest, is Dr. Kelly Stone. She's a strength and conditioning specialist. She's also a two times CrossFit Games athlete. So give a round of applause for Dr. Kelly Stone. Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you actually got into the sport of CrossFit.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kelly Stone. Thank you for having me. So my journey to CrossFit, I guess really starts back when I was little doing gymnastics and swimming. I grew up as a competitive gymnast starting at age 4, and most of my childhood, for about 14 years, I spent doing, gymnastics 4 to 5 hours a day. So that was kind of where my love of sports and fitness started. I also swam competitively, like I said, starting at age 6. And so that was kind of my whole upbringing was, sports and athletics, coupled with, trying to make academics also, something important to me. When I went into college, I swam Division 1. So while I was there, I had strength and conditioning coaches that were mostly CrossFitters. But at that time, it wasn't something that I pursued directly, but I was exposed to that kind of style of metabolic training, conditioning. And then after college, I went to graduate school to get my doctorate in physical therapy. And while I was there, I actually dabbled first in bodybuilding in the figure category. And that was honestly a really eye-opening experience for me, and something I definitely don't regret, but quickly realized was not the sport for me. So funny story, how I actually got into CrossFit was I was doing a clinical rotation in Jacksonville, Florida, and the CrossFit or the bodybuilding gym that I was going to was attached to a CrossFit gym. And so the CrossFit coach, he would kind of see me walking by, and he kept saying like, oh, you really need to come over and try CrossFit. I promise you'll love it. You should just give it a shot, and I just kind of blew him off. Like, I'm a physical therapy student.
Those CrossFitters, right? They're so
right? I'm like, CrossFit's dangerous, so I just, kind of pushed him away. And then at one point down the line, he comes over and he goes, all right, I'm hosting a competition tomorrow. It's down at the beach. I really think you have a good shot to win it. Like, will you please just come try? Like, I will, teach you the movements. I'll pay your entry fee, and if you end up hating it, like, I'll leave you alone. And so I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. Let's go, So he basically, taught me how to power clean the night before this competition.
Wow.
Was like, here's kind of movements. And so I went that next day, ended up winning, and I absolutely loved it. Yep. And then I just honestly never looked back since. So that was just over 4 years ago now. I spent, the rest of that kind of year kind of bouncing around to a couple gyms as I moved, finishing up my doctoral degree, and then moved back to Denver, which is where I'm from, in May of 2016. And I've been doing CrossFit here ever since.
Nice. Thanks for the quick roundabout. That was great. Yeah. And when you're a bodybuilding background, how easy was it for you to transition into CrossFit? Although, the CrossFit movements, they're more snatch oriented, they're much more gymnastic style. So do you think your bodybuilding background really benefited you, or was it your gymnastics background?
I think that honestly, the combination of all of the things that I participated in, gymnastics, swimming, and bodybuilding all prepared me really well. I think that obviously there's a huge gymnastics emphasis in CrossFit. So I was at a huge advantage, coming in, already knowing how to go upside down really comfortably. It was like, oh, day one, like, here's a handstand push-up. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing those since I was 5, So all of those movements, handstand push-ups, handstand walking, toes to bar, pull-ups, like, they just came really naturally to me. So that's something that I think I really, really, really benefited from, and just general body awareness from gymnastics. So I had never touched a barbell until I started CrossFit. So we think about the technical movements of snatch and clean and jerk and some of those things. And, I definitely had to kind of start at ground zero and learn those. But I would say, even knowing that, I moved and progressed much more quickly than a lot of people because I had that really good body awareness from gymnastics and just that, body strength that I had my entire life. I think the sport of swimming really gave me the endurance background to really being successful in some of those like longer type CrossFit workouts. So, it's funny because even still to this day, like, I'm a little bit of, I would say, a bigger athlete. I'm definitely not a teeny tiny little cardio machine. But I think I surprise people sometimes when I do well at some of those longer type endurance events, where they look at me and they go, oh, she's really, strong and muscular. She shouldn't be good at those. But people don't realize that I spent, 4 or 5 hours a day swimming and doing endurance style training for a big chunk of my life. So, I think I really kind of developed that side of my CrossFit, repertoire from swimming. And then I think having the background in bodybuilding, was a really good strength basis to be able to transition into CrossFit. I think there are a lot of people that just go right into CrossFit and they don't have that, static foundational strength. And that's not to say that you can't develop it later. But I think, for me, I'm, a person where I think like, you should be able to do a strict pull-up before you do a kipping pull-up. And I think you should be able to do a strict muscle-up before you do a kipping muscle-up. So, that's just an opinion of mine. I think it's, keeps you safe and make sure that your body is able to handle the forces of some of those more dynamic kipping movements. So I think having that foundational strength, kind of paired me really well to kind of go into CrossFit. One thing I would also say is I think I have always had a really good balance of flexibility and strength. And that's not necessarily something that I would say for a lot of bodybuilders.
Yeah.
That's kind of unique to me. So,
Yeah.
we tend to think, yeah. So I think that
so
kind of comes back to gymnastics again, so having, even to this day, even as I've built up a lot of muscle and a lot of strength over the last couple of years, I still, have just been kind of naturally blessed with great mobility. I don't have trouble going overhead. I have great squat depth, and so those things have been really, really beneficial because they allow me to get into the optimal positions for a lot of these really technical movements. And it's not something that, I think people probably look at me and think that I do mobility work a lot, and I really don't, to be perfectly honest.
Really?
I'm just pretty naturally gifted, or, at this point had so many years developing it that it's, pretty much just in my back pocket at this point.
Yeah, you don't even have to think about it, right?
Yeah.
So like when you're doing all this stuff, what would you say would be the most difficult thing for you in CrossFit before you even started? Because I know you're coming from all this background and everything. It's probably easy for you. Was there anything that's specifically hard?
I think the Olympic lifting movements, it was just something that I had no experience with. So that obviously took a long time. I also had never really had a background in like squatting heavy and deadlifting heavy. And, I was strong for my body. I could do lots of pull-ups. I could do strict handstand push-ups, but I couldn't necessarily, back squat 300 pounds, So I think, and that's things where like, it just takes a while to develop strength to be able, it takes, practice and time. And I've always been a very quad dominant athlete. And I would say that's true of a lot of females and a lot of CrossFitters. So, there was a point about 2 years ago where I actually had a back injury, and it kind of, ultimately came back to not being able to use my core correctly in dynamic CrossFit movements, which are very different than gymnastics type, movements. So I really had to, work with a coach and learn how to use my core correctly and work on using my glutes and my hamstrings, because it was just something that was so foreign to my body. And without even realizing it, my body found a way to compensate and use all the wrong muscles, for these strength movements, which ultimately hindered my progress. So I kind of had to like take a step back, go all the way back to the beginning and really rebuild those movements, but in the long run have gotten much, much stronger as a result of doing that.
Nice. And would you recommend that to everyone that's like in that stage of CrossFit? If they're still hitting a plateau, would you recommend going back to the basics?
Absolutely. I think at some point, what I tell people is, if you're just doing CrossFit just for the community and for health and wellness, like just go to your classes, enjoy that community aspect and get your workout in. It's going to be great. But if you really want to compete and you want to get to that next level, at some point you have to realize that you have to tackle your own weaknesses. And those are going to be individual, every person. So, I always recommend at some point you're probably going to have to consider getting a coach to at least, look at accessory work for you and to make sure you're not kind of missing the mark. Because, like I said, I'm someone with gymnastics background. I have a doctoral degree. I am used to looking at movement patterns. And I was totally, out of sync with what my body was actually doing. So, I think I needed somebody else to say, hey, like, we needed to take a step back and relearn some of these things. And we need to incorporate, these types of movements, and additionally, just, giving that kind of just outside kind of look. Something else that's been really, really helpful for me is I started filming a lot more of my workouts and a lot of my movements. And you can learn so much by watching yourself. Like,
Exactly.
you may be hearing something, a coach may say, hey, you're shifting to your toes and, you hear it, but until, at least for me, you actually see yourself doing it, it's really hard to like make that connection. So that's something I always tell people too, is like, if you feel like you're stuck, like at very minimum, film yourself from a couple of different angles and then really like piece apart that movement and see what you're doing.
Okay, nice, nice. That's a good piece of advice. I gotta take that. I gotta start filming myself more often, even
Yeah.
though I hate being on camera. But
Yeah, I know it's super beneficial.
it's good.
Yeah.
And did you always have a coach with you during your time in CrossFit, or were you like at a single point in time were you by yourself?
For at the start, I was definitely just by myself. Like, our CrossFit gym had coaches, but I didn't have somebody that was working with me specifically. When I moved back to Denver in 2016, I set a goal of trying to make it onto our team's CrossFit Games team that following year. So because our gym qualified for the first time in 2016. So I was still pretty new at that time, but I put myself at that gym because I wanted to be with people that were better than me and would push me to get better. So I kind of trained over that year. That following year in 2017, we determined our team based off of your open performance. So I was fortunate to make a lot of progress over that year and placed well so that I was able to get on our regionals team and eventually our games team that year. But we had a coach who just kind of organized and helped coach us through that entire year. And he has over time now become my personal coach in terms of accessories and strength work, that type of thing. So he knows me really well at this point. But yeah, I mean, I didn't always start as having a specific coach.
Okay, nice. So you did Wadapalooza last year as well. Which would you say is the hardest one for you? Was it the first competition that you went to, or was it the Wadapalooza one?
I think it's honestly, I'd say probably the hardest competition I've done so far is Granite Games last year.
Okay.
That was a sanctioned event. And ultimately, I think it was because that was the first major individual competition I've done. So Wadapalooza, I've always done teams. Recently in February, I was on a team of 4. Both years that I've gone to the CrossFit Games, I've been on a team of 4 or a team of 6. And I've also done Wadapalooza the last 3 years on a team of 3 females. So, not to say that those aren't challenging, but there's just something different of competing for 4 days straight by yourself, 3 to 4 events a day. The toll on your body is just so much higher than, doing a team, because invariably, like, you end up splitting the work and the workout. So it's just not the same strain. So that event that I did, it was up in Minnesota last summer, Granite Games. I would say to date, that's probably been my most challenging competition. I was supposed to be competing again individual at 2 sanctionals coming up, but those are currently on hold because of everything going on with coronavirus. So we'll just have to kind of see what happens with the rest of our season.
And do you have plans to go to the CrossFit Games this year as well, or no?
That's kind of the goal. So with these 2 sanctioned events that I was supposed to be competing at, one was supposed to be actually, I think, next weekend, and then one in June. Both of those were opportunities to potentially qualify. So that's definitely where my focus and my goals are at this point. But we'll have to kind of, like I said, see what happens with the rest of the year.
Oh my gosh. And did you have to switch up your training? It has to be more rigorous than before, or was there any big changes you had to make?
It's just different, with team stuff, that chemistry working together is super, super important. So we spend a lot of time working in pairs and working as teams of four, getting used to those like synchronized movements, and a lot more like work rest type intervals because you tend to be kind of splitting work and switching in and out. So my training now is, like I said, a lot more individualized. So there's a lot more emphasis on, my specific needs and weaknesses versus like a team specific, weakness. So
Mhm.
I would say, overall volume may not have changed all that much, but it's just a lot more specific to me. I do a lot more running now for myself, a lot more strength specific work. So yeah, it's definitely changed. It's just more specific to me versus a team.
Okay. And what brings you the more fulfillment in your training? Is it with the teams or by yourself? What would you
It's
say?
so hard.
Yeah.
I loved being a part of the CrossFit Games teams that I was on. And, I think that, after that second year and after 2018, I'm not sure how familiar you are with CrossFit and how everything works, but all of the rules changed. They completely
Mhm.
changed the structure. So it was just like a big hit. And so, at that point, the members of my team, they had been, that was their third year. They were kind of all looking to have a break. And I was like rearing to go. I just like wanted to get started again. I was healthy again. So I think at this point, I'm open to either. I think I have a personal goal of qualifying as an individual just because I've already done it twice as a team.
Mhm.
But I love, the experience of being on a team. So if I had the opportunity to go back on a team, I would definitely, take that offer. And there's something I would say definitely being on a team is a little bit more fun just because you get to share that
Yeah.
experience with people. Even when you're out there, you have so many more memories because you're something funny happens. There's always these funny interactions of who did what or, who dropped something. Like it's just, it's a fun environment. But I just think my competitive nature, there's just something, I hold this value of like being able to compete at the individual level. So I think, that's kind of where my head's at right now. And I really would like to see if I can accomplish that in the next, year or two. But yeah, but ultimately I love to compete. So anyway, as long as I can be on the competition floor, like I'm happy.
Well, wishing you the best in all your future endeavors, man.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And I want to ask, because you're a CrossFit woman and everything, right? How hard is it for you to break the stigma that's associated with a lot of the CrossFit women? If you're too muscular, you got too much ripped abs and everything, how difficult was it for you to smash the stigma of that? And what would you recommend for the others, CrossFit women?
Hmm. Yeah, so that's funny. That's something that I have honestly, struggled with in some form my entire life. And I feel like it really hasn't been until the last year or two where I've gotten to the point where I don't let it phase me at all. Like if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I like to bring attention to that because I think it's still a really big issue. And I've had points in my life, like, even as young as like middle school, where like I was made fun of for having muscles. Like I was always that girl that had a lot more muscle than most of the boys,
Mm-hmm.
so I got a lot of, like, oh, look how many muscles she has, or let's arm wrestle or flex, and I used to just try to kind of brush it off, but deep down it really bothered me. And, going into high school, I felt kind of that same way. I was still kind of, made fun of, but like just, try to pretend like it didn't bother me. And as I've kind of progressed through the years and really kind of learned a lot about nutrition and you know everything, I just feel like I've been able to get past that and realize that you know being strong and having muscle has been such a defining part of my life. Like it brings me so much joy to feel how I feel during workouts and to compete at a high level. And I think it's awesome. And like I love to show that, yes, like most of the time I'm in workout clothes and total mess, but like I also like to dress up and look really nice. And I think you can be really strong and feminine at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've kind of taken it upon myself to kind of be like a model of that, like I want to show you like that, like, hey, like I still get, comments, kind of like clockwork. Every week I get something or other of like, oh, you look whatever, you look manly, you look whatever. And, like, yeah, I'll bring attention to it and I'll call those people out because ultimately I think it's a reflection of them and how they're self-conscious about, maybe not looking a certain way, and maybe I intimidate them, but ultimately that's a reflection of them, not me. And as long as I'm being true to myself and doing things that I love, like, it shouldn't matter what anybody else thinks. Like, I'm not doing this for anybody else. Like, I don't care what you or anyone else thinks about my body. I focus on what my body can do and how it makes me feel, and that's enough for me. So that would be my kind of biggest thing to tell other women is, do what makes you happy. If you want to be skinny, be skinny. If you want to have muscle, build muscle. It shouldn't matter what anyone else thinks. And those people that really love and support you will love you no matter what. So, screw all the haters and don't let them get to you.
That's a really good piece of advice. I like it. Also, with CrossFit, what would you say is the most beneficial thing for you? Would it be the physical aspect or would it be the mental aspect of it?
That's so funny. I think the thing that is so unique about CrossFit, and something that, I feel like goes back to a lot of the, sports that I did, is really just like that community of people. Yes, it's a great workout. It combines strength and conditioning and agility and all these kind of marks of fitness that, are important to me. But I think beyond that, it's just, it attracts a certain type of person, and the community of people is so amazing and so enthralling that, like, once you start, it's like you can't, nothing else feels the same. And it's so funny because, like, I also typically, not quarantine times, I also have a membership at just your normal kind of Globo type gym, just to kind of do some other accessories and stuff. And it always, every time I go in there, it's so funny how different the culture is, like how people just, they, and even I go in there, I have my headphones in, I'm like, don't bother me. It's just everyone kind of sticks to themselves, which is fine, but it's just so different than, like, I walk into my CrossFit gym and it's
and
like,
people are just like high-fiving you.
yeah. And it's like people of, the most amazing thing to me, I think, is that you have people of all walks of life. We have teenagers and we've got 60-year-old men, and everyone's there, and we may be doing different versions of a workout, but everyone's trying their best, everyone's working hard, and we're all there supporting each other. And I've just seen that time and time again in my gym, and also in traveling to all these different places. Like, even last fall, I went to Mexico to visit my parents, and had reached out to a CrossFit gym to be able to do some of the open workouts. And they were so accommodating. They were so kind. I met some amazing people down there that, like, I will continue to be in touch with, forever. And so I think, it's just such a cool, part where you just get to, meet amazing people and have that kind of support. But that's not to say that I don't love the, exercise, portion of it, and also, how mentally challenging it is. I think that's something that I always look for, and something that, or was probably the reason ultimately why bodybuilding wasn't a good fit for me. I felt like in that sport, I didn't really have control over the results, or like the work that I put in didn't really matter, because ultimately I was going to stand on a stage and have somebody else tell me what was wrong with me, or tell me, who they liked better. It didn't really matter what I put in, I felt like, but versus like with CrossFit,
It's
how
more
hard I
performance.
work. Yeah, it's like if I put in the effort, like, I can get faster at workouts. And if I put in the effort building strength, like, I can clean and jerk more. And that's all on me. At the end of the day, I show up at a competition and all I can do is my best, and then see how that stacks up against everybody else. But I'm in control of my fate. And that's not necessarily true in other sports. So
I like that. You are in control of your fate. Is that
yeah.
the one? If you had to offer like one piece of advice to any CrossFit newbie, anyone that's coming into this, regardless of gender, what would it be?
Yeah. I like that, actually, now that we're talking about it. Like, you're in control of your fate. Like, you have it within your power to tackle your weaknesses or not. Like, you have within your power to, show up every day and put your best foot forward or not, and ultimately that work that you put in will reflect the outcome that you get.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly. It was great to have you on. Anything you'd like to plug in? Anything you're working on in particular right now?
I am just, trekking along, doing physical therapy as I can, trying to really help as many people as possible with some nutrition and exercise and stuff. So would love if you follow along with my journey on Instagram. But other than that, thank you so much for having me. And it
Yeah.
was awesome talking to you.
Yeah. Happy Easter, by the way, if you
Yeah.
celebrate. If not,
Yeah.
have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks again,
Thank you so
Kelly.
much. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, future fire breathers, I hope you enjoyed that video. And look, if you're still struggling to maintain motivation in all your home workouts, and you're constantly lacking the energy to make every one of those workouts worth every drop of sweat, and you feel like you're losing all the gains you worked so hard for, then I got the perfect thing for you. It is my latest supplement, Sunfire. It's an all-natural nutritional powerhouse that's going to help you push past the toughest WODs, EMOMs, Metcons, RXs, RFTs, what have you, with absolute ease, and help you gain the confidence and earn the respect from the top CrossFitters in the box. Click the link down in the description below to grab yours today. Hurry though, I only have 100 balls left that I can actually give out. So make your way down to the link in the description below. I'll see you on the other side.